Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for one of our online networks. My name is Saira Ahmed, and I am the Senior Qualifications Manager for GCSE Maths. I'd like to start by saying that I hope you and your loved ones are doing well and that these are unprecedented times for us all. I hope these online networks provide you with some helpful strategies for teaching and learning during these challenging times. I will run through the structure of today's session. We will start with a quick update from Mark Howlett, who is the head of the Maths Product Management team, to update you on recent off-call announcements around examinations. I will then hand the floor over to our subject expert, Melios Michael, who is our curriculum leader of mathematics and a special leader of education at Hampstead Hall Academy. He has lots of teaching experience and a really good understanding of the qualifications and the support we offer. The focus of today's session will include digital books and useful features for remote learning, variation theory and an independent study, diagnostic tests to assess students' progress at different key stages, platforms to enhance online learning with recommendations according to the year group, platforms to deliver online live lessons and awareness of safeguarding issues, things to consider when setting up online lessons, and useful resources to support remote learning. We will then finish off with an open Q&A session where delegates can ask Melios any questions on teaching and learning around GCSE Maths. To ask a question, you can type your question using the chat facility at any stage throughout our event. We will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible during the next 1 hour and 15 minutes. However, if we can't answer all of your queries, we will make sure we follow up with you after the event. The platform will be open for you to continue networking with other teachers if you wish until 6 p.m, although the event will finish at 5:15 p.m. During the event, I will be posting links to where you can find more information around key Pearson support, so please do look out for these links and do save them. After the session has ended, an evaluation form will appear on your screen. If you have time, we would really appreciate your feedback on this event and any suggestions or thoughts on how we might improve it moving forward. As John has said, all of these sessions are being recorded and we will make them available to you for you to go back over as soon as possible. If you are having any technical difficulties, please also let us know by messaging through the text box and we will make sure we can get you up and running as soon as possible. We hope you find today's event useful and it will help to provide you with further advice and guidance in these challenging times. I'm now going to hand over to Mark to update you on any off-call announcements. Sorry everyone, we're just having a few technical issues. We should be back up and running in about 1 minute. Please do bear with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melios Michael. I'm not sure if you can see me at this point. Sorry, we had some technical issues there. So I'm going to start with the training. If at any point there's an issue with the sound, I would advise if you closed the actual Adobe and then come back into this, and then you should be able to hear the sound clearly. So as Sarah said, my name is Melios Michael. I'm a curriculum leader, head of maths in a comprehensive school in Birmingham. I'm also collaborate with other schools, and I offer some training and try and support any school with the new qualifications of maths for both GCSE and A-level. Now, during these difficult times, we had to adjust the way we deliver lessons, and we had to approach the online platforms. And luckily, a lot of the different platforms have offered the services for free. If in the past they were charging. So it was trying to understand and see how we can change that. So in today's session, here, the outline is as follows. I'm going to refer to some of the digital books. Then variation theory. Some of you might have heard this from different websites and different resources. Some diagnostic tests, and we're looking into that, especially considering the year 10s losing a big chunk of their learning. And then by the time they come into year 11, we need to find ways to understand where they are and then try and meet the gaps, as well as having all the usual pressure that we have when they are in year 11 and getting them to the grades that we want them to. Understanding a bit more different features of platforms and how we can utilize them. Our school, we have been delivering online lessons to year 10s and year 12s. However, we've also provided lessons to the younger year groups, but not live lessons. And again, I'll give the reasonings behind that as I go through the different resources. In addition to that, if you do give online live lessons, I am going to share some of the safeguarding issues and things that you should consider that have come from our designated safeguarding leader at the school, in collaboration with Educare, that's part of TES. And I will then finish with some more useful resources that I can mention. A lot of the resources I'll be sharing and the practices are quite well known, but I'm focusing more about the approaches of how we can use them. And some of those practices would be my own, my team's, but also other teachers we've collaborated as well. So starting with the first one, Pearson Active Learn. If you haven't already signed up for this, they have offered all the services for free during this period to support all schools. And what's quite useful is the online digital books. So you could see those digital books here. Now the difference, if you haven't used them, those bundle class of books, they also have other features which I want to share with you and make sure that you're aware. So if you do give online live lessons, you can utilize those features as well. In addition, you'll notice at the bottom here, you will be having two different assessment materials, the old one and the updated one. Now you should really discuss with your department as a team whether you'll be using some of those assessments as unit tests to assess students and therefore not use them and upload them at this stage. But if you're not, you can definitely use the old ones as a worksheet to set on different platforms, and I'll talk about the platforms later on. Do be careful though, some questions are used in both of them, so they might have common questions. So do have a look at that and discuss with your head of department the different procedures that you might have. Looking at the online digital book. Now, the difference between the student books and having a textbook, all the different questions can be clickable. But the other thing to notice are those icons on the side. There are hidden PowerPoints attached to every topic. Some of them might be good for starters, some of them for deep learning, that you can download and then assign to your students, depending on what platform your school uses. The other thing to notice are those icons here, which are video clips. Now, Pearson, in collaboration with Cassie, have also uploaded different videos for the different calculators, whether you're using the ClassWiz or the CG50. They explain and they give you step-by-step on how to use that. That might be good for you to share with students or yourselves to have a look at, as you can then use the calculators during live lessons as well, as an emulator or with a visualizer, and I'll talk about the visualizer later on as well. The other thing to notice is this here, at the bottom, which is also clickable. It's called Active Learn Homework. If you're new to this platform, you can then upload, and they can help you with this as well, upload all your students on there, and then you can then send via either emails or another school platform their logins. And as you teach from here, you could just click on that link there, and then it will open all the interactive questions relevant to that page, of that topic. So for example, here I'm looking at solving quadratic equations. You can see all the questions. They're all interactive, so you can play around with this and see how the students would perform and how they would have to use this. The other things to notice, and I'm showing you with the cursor, the green cursor, if you could see that, they do have learning aids there. Those are either video clips, and especially in these difficult times where we don't have lessons every day or 4 lessons a week, they can click on that and then they can watch a video specifically for that. On the side to that, you've got the A plus B. That will simplify the question. And then at that point, they get that support if they click on that. Now, you could then just select which questions you'd like by pressing the Add button, or you can just add them all and then assign them to your users, to your students. Now, one thing we've done with our year 9s and 10s especially, we have assigned a previous topic, a topic that we've taught them before the lockdown, as a revision. This way we can get a nice diagnostic test out there and then get some feedback so that we can see what they remember and what they've been practicing. And this way we can then have a look at the progress of our classes, and then when we do get back to school, we can then have some interventions with them. Using this, you could see it labels red, amber, green, but it also has the different timings. Students can also leave emojis. But on top of that, you can the platform also allows you to click on a certain student, and then you can go deeper into this and see what they've how they perform in each question, but also the answers they put, and look for some misconceptions or differences that you can then intervene either by setting a specific task to the student or teaching it when you go back to school. On top of that, the other thing that we haven't utilized when we used to be in the classroom was the annotation. So if you do have a live lesson, you can click on it, and I'll show you on a live sharing my screen in a few minutes to show you how how you can use that. So you can share a screen, and then you can start solving and answering questions next to them. In addition to that, if you click on any of the questions, you get more space. So therefore, you don't have to nib any of these questions. You can straight away write on this, and then click at the bottom here to reveal the answer. Now, as I said, these books here are free during this period of time, and therefore you can utilize this to support you with delivery of lessons. The other feature I would mention, that if you do give access to your students, so you could use that without having to worry about setting all the students a login. So you can use it as part of your lessons that you deliver. If you do assign all the students a username and password, then you can assign them those homeworks I mentioned. Looking at the actual resources, so if you click on student resources on the side here, and I'll show you on a live link, as I said, in a minute by sharing my screen, every single topic in the book, you can click and see what videos they have, and then you can share them. The videos look like this. So some of them you'll have someone describing and talking. In some of the videos, you'll have someone with a pen and going through step by step. At this point, before I talk about these books here, can I please ask if I can share my screen, please? Just to show where all these features are. Right, so now I'm about to share my screen. If you cannot see this, if it's quite small on your own screen, I would recommend there are 4 arrows at on your screen. If you click on that, they'll maximize the screen and you can then see it properly. So I'm just going to drag and drop the website now so you can all see this. So once you log in, now because of this, because of the resources being free at this point, because they're free at this point, you might have a lot of other subjects. So you're going to have to look either for the A-level or the GCSE one, which looks like this. By clicking on this, then you'll see the screen I showed you earlier on. I'm going to demonstrate by using the higher book, the blue one, right now. So if I open that one, oops, I think they've locked me out. Apologies for that. I'm going to have to, yep, I'm going to have to log in again. They do have a timeout period for that. So please bear with me. You should be. Try to be organized and I'll have it all signed in beforehand, but there is a time if you don't use it for a bit, it logs you off. All right, so if I go to the same page I was showing you earlier on with the quadratics, here, notice at the bottom there's the Active Learn, the links that I mentioned here. They also have links to GeoGebra apps as well, which are quite useful. But at the bottom here, you can see the drawing tools. So now this one would be useful. I have an interactive pen. You might not have an interactive pen. If you have a tablet and you can then use a tablet and then you can share a screen from the tablet and then you can annotate like that. What we've also done with my team, we've asked our DT department to borrow graphic tablets. And then this way they could also annotate themselves. Otherwise you won't be able to do this. So using that, you'll either need a tablet, a touchscreen device, or a graphic tablet, and you could do that. If you don't have that, don't worry. I mean, you won't be able to use this one. I'll mention the visualizer next. You can also use your telephone as a camera where you can hold and annotate and do that if live lessons is what you are interested in. But again, I'm mentioning different approaches, and you can then decide what's appropriate for yourselves. Going up here, in the exercise section, you can ask students to independently work on the topic, on a previous topic. So for the year 10, for example, if you've covered certain topics, you might want them to go back and revise those by going through the interactive questions. Now you can check, like for example here, which ones they've done. So you can see green or gold in these sections. That means that we've already done that. The student resources has the exact same format, follows the same order as the books, but has the different videos, so you can see, and that's the share option there that I was referring to earlier on, that you can then share a video. Now, before I go back to the presentation, you can also share the books with your students. You'd have to share that with the students. By signing up to this, it doesn't automatically mean they can access this. So you'll go through the admin. We don't have the time right now to show you, but you can ask and inquire for them to help you with this. The other thing I'm going to refer to now is the Purposeful Practice book, which is also going to be provided free as well. And I'm going to come to that in a minute. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we can go back to the presentation, please. Can we have the presentation up? Thank you. Right. So the Purposeful Practice books is two other books, one for foundation and higher. As you can see, blue and green, they're also offered for free with the services during this period of time. And what I like about them, so they have the exact same order in topics. But what's really good about them, and we do like using them for homework tasks, if I go to the same topic as I had, so this is solving quadratic equations, so it matches the book order as well, you can see there are Purposeful Practice 1, 2, and 3. And then it moves to problem solving and then to an exam practice question. But what's nice about them, if you look at the questions, they have been made so that with the variation theory in mind. So each question changes slightly and allows the students independently to make some links. Now, again, if they can access the first question, that's where teaching is required, either through a video or through something. But if they can access that, you can then change the difficulty as they go through the questions. And I think for this time where they're studying by themselves, I think we need questions like that. So you're not setting 100 questions of the same type and you just ask them to kind of spend the time, but you want them as they go through one question to the other to be thinking, to be creative, to be making those links. And I think that's what they've done with this, and that's why I recommend them. So looking at the book, I would take this, snip this, and upload it to whatever platform you might have with the students, whether that's through OneDrive, whether that's through Google Classroom, whether that's through whatever Teams, whatever you're using. I'd set this as a homework task with either a PowerPoint or with the slides or after my live lesson, and that's why I like this one. Now, I'm moving away from Active Learn right now. Variation Theory, Craig Barton has a website with a lot of PowerPoints on that. So even if you don't use those books, but like, as I said, they are available for if you sign up for that, you could use the PowerPoint. And what's nice with the website here, he has PowerPoints for each one. Now, he has made them so that if you look at the second slide, I'll use my green, where is it? If I use the pointer, I can't see the pointer coming up on this one. I think there's a lag, so I'm going to leave that. So you've got PowerPoints for each one, and then you've got tags, so you could see that you could just choose which category, which topic you want, and then they've got, oh, this is my pointer has appeared now. So if I go, let me see if I can go back. Here we go. So that second slide really helps for live lessons, because what we've also noticed with live lessons, we need a lot of space to write on the screen if we're writing on the screen. So you can have a lot of questions like you do in the classroom, so that we have the space to annotate. Now, I will talk again about a visualizer, because some of the teachers, they've shared on the video, they had instead of showing a picture of themselves, they showed the image from a visualizer or from a phone looking downwards, and then had the slide with the questions on the side. And I'll show you that later on as well. But as I said, so Craig Barton has a website with a lot of those, and if you've used them in the past, it's a nice time to come back to them now. You can download them, and then once you download them, you can edit them and change them, of course. I've mentioned Active Learn. Some of you might already have your students on Kerboodle. If you have that, you can also use that. They have the same Active Learn online. Sorry, they have the same online books with questions, and it's free as well during this period. So don't worry if you've already uploaded on that. I'm just talking about the approach at this point, not just the resource. Okay, so they have similar features. I'm not aware if they have everything that I've just mentioned, but they do follow the same format, and you can see the video clicks at the bottom as well. Another website and platform I'd like to talk about is Dr. Frost. The reason we use, and we actually use both the Active Learn and Dr. Frost, because for our year 12s, we've been running online lessons throughout the whole lockdown period. But Active Learn doesn't offer a homework platform for the A-level students yet, and even the year 11. So we decided then to register all our year 12s on Dr. Frost. What's nice about it, it's the fact that he's got a PowerPoint for every topic on the Active Learn books. So the Pearson Active Learn books, he's already made free available PowerPoints for each one. So if I go into, I think, Pure here, you could see this one here. Here's an example of the Pure book. He's even made a note here that that's a textbook question. So we'd be running this. What I've done, though, because I wanted to annotate as well, I've removed this section and allowed myself to be able to space to write. So whereas in the classroom I'd have those boxes and click on them, I've removed and made space so I can write and show, either model the answer or with a student leading and me writing down as well. But if you look at the Active Learn book, on here, there's the example, the textbook question. So the way we've done it, we've used the PowerPoints from himself, we've adapted them, and in some cases I've added more questions. There are students, we found that some of the motivated students who want to work a lot, and they'll take, as soon as we show them how to do this, they go and solve every single question. Some of the more disengaged students, the fact that they're coming on the live lessons, for me that was a positive thing, and I cannot expect them to. And unfortunately, I need to be aware of the background as well. So some of my students, I know they live in difficult situations. So I know that once they come off, they probably won't do a single question until my next lesson. So in that aspect, I had to choose some more questions and add them so that we do more questions together. Yes, there's a disadvantage about the students who want to go ahead and speed up a bit more. But again, it's having to adapt and find it. I did find at the beginning we slowed down because I had to get used to a different way of teaching, and then the students had to learn different procedures, and I'll talk about more procedures later on. But once they got used to this, our pace increased as well. I did talk about year 12 there, but if you do go on Dr. Frost, he's got slides and PowerPoints for GCSE as well, and he does use reference to a lot of past paper questions. As you can see, he has those boxes where you can just click and annotate. So if you're not going to give an online lesson, you can use this and upload them. You might want to upload a version of this PowerPoint with no answers, and then once the deadline comes of the homework, upload this one with the answers, and the students can click themselves. It really depends on the group that you're teaching and their ability, and how much you can trust them, and how independent they are as well. So I did mention year 12s, it was about the online homework. So you can then set homework or assessments on here by clicking on either key stage 2, 3, 4, or 5. You can see there, and then clicking on the relevant topic. He does show you a difficulty bar here from 1 till 4, so you can see that, and then you can create your own worksheet that you will then assign. In this point here, next, like with Active Learn, next to each question, he's made some really nice videos for students to watch, and then attempt the questions. So all of this is free as well, and it's just deciding. Now, we did have to register the students because the students weren't registered on the platform. I did this during an online lesson, so I got all the usernames. Now, if you don't have that luxury of having all your students online, or it's difficult to do that, what I would advise, if they are registered on one platform, see if you can sign them up with the same username and passwords. So there are ways that you might have to adjust it, where it has for example, if my username was Michael, on Active Learn, here I might have to put michael@hampsteadhall.com, and then just send an email or a text message out to the parents to inform them that there is an email or a task going out on this new platform. It really depends on how your schools communicate as well, and you can seek support for that, hopefully within your school. As with Active Learn, another nice thing about this is you can have a nice diagnostic of what the students have done, and you can save all this, so when you go back to school, you know how to intervene, what gaps they have. And like with Active Learn, here as well, they can leave you messages and inquire, and you can look for those mistakes or misconceptions and decide how you could deal with them when you do your next live lesson. He has a whiteboard feature as well, so you can use this to put a question on there and write. He's even done some mini whiteboard sections for the students. The problem I have and I face with that, Dr. Frost says himself that he's very good at writing with his mouse. You can do that, of course. I don't even want to show you how my writing looks with that. And of course, I do have my interactive pen, but students don't. So again, it's interesting to see whether your students can cope with that, but that feature's there. If you want, you can use it. This last feature from Dr. Frost is the live mode. I actually tried this with my year 12. It was quite fun. You decide which questions you want to do, like a worksheet, but then it works like a Kahoot, if you've heard of the Kahoot. The way I've done it, I shared my screen, I had the question, and then students joined with their mobile phones, and they had a time limit as well. We really enjoyed that, and it was a nice break of that routine, and especially the fact that they can't see their friends. It was a more casual lesson in that aspect as well, of course, with all the rules stated beforehand. Now, I wouldn't have tried this at the beginning. I had to teach a few lessons online, get comfortable with the platforms, with the procedures, the students actually following my new expectations, and then I tried this, and it was fantastic. I did mention Kahoot. Kahoot, I would recommend using as well once you've done a few lessons. If you do online lessons as well, remember, students don't get to see their friends a lot. Their only way is through social media. Some parents are stricter than others. It is and like we do, a lot of us do quizzes at the end of terms. You can find a lot of ready-made quizzes with some maths inside or real-life applications to them, or some generic application. You could do it like a mini task as well. So I do recommend that, and it follows a similar manner to what Dr. Frost one does as well. Now, I'm a big fan of mini whiteboards and AFL in the classroom, and the fact that I'm teaching on the screen and a lot of my students were muted and I couldn't see them, and I was just teaching like this, or in some of my other year groups where I can't even talk or see them and I'm just uploading work, really frustrates me, because I was used to mini whiteboards, understanding where they are and immediately intervening. So diagnostic questions from, again, Craig Barton played a good role at this point here. They're free as well. They're PowerPoints. You can go and download any of them, and they have 4 choices. You can assign them to your students as well through here. Yes, it requires then again uploading names and assigning links to students, or if you're doing live lessons, you can share the screen, put it there, get them to give you answers either through a chat like you guys are writing right now, and this way you're getting feedback which you can then save and do something about them either in the following lesson or when you go back to school. An interesting way I've heard him doing this live as well, and to teachers, it was, if you do have an able group, you can always say what mistake or misconception do you think is behind this one, or which question would be the one that most students will get wrong, which answer, for example. And I like that from him, the way he's done that a few times. It's a nice discussion I've had with my most able students as well. On this, if you go onto a website, EEDI, which is together with diagnosis, so basically you just click on scheme of work and it takes you there. They have the whole qualification, so all the topics that you have on Active Learn, they have a PowerPoint for each one that you can then assign to your students. You can either download and say it's for homework, but there again they're free and you can use. Now, going to another website, Desmos. I really liked it before and used it as a graphic tool. What they've done, they've actually created a lot of resources for remote learning. And I was very impressed with that, and we have tried it. I'm sorry, just someone's made the, I can't see the PowerPoint. If you just give me a second, there we go, we're back. So Desmos here has a, as I was saying, sorry, you can register as well, and then you'll have a dashboard. Now with this, so if you go to teacher.desmos.com, you can then search for different activities. So as I was talking about quadratics, I'm going to stick with quadratics as well. And then I found some resources here. I'm going to talk about, for example, the will it hit the hoop. If you click on that, you can actually see they've made videos, they've made different tasks that the students can leave feedback, they can choose answers, predict answers, and then they can move the graphs and like you would on Desmos as well. Now, there's two ways of doing this. You can actually click on student on the student preview here, and if you're sharing a screen, you can have the students watching you, and you can ask and do it while you have a live lesson, or you can create a class code and then send this through any means that you have to the students together with a link. Now, if I just show you an example of how that task looks here, for example, it says start with a prediction, will it hit or not, and then you have the choice of moving the graph later on and seeing whether you're right or wrong. So this is just one of the tasks that you could do, and it's quite engaging. So this, you will tell the students to go to this website here or give them a direct link and then the code as an example here, and then they can try that. And because you've created a code, you have a dashboard here, and then you can see how they perform. Be aware though that if they don't use if you don't do this through a Google Classroom or a platform like that, the students can put whatever name, and then it'll be a bit difficult to know which students have done what. So be aware of that as well. That's an example of where they put the class code, and then they can either sign in, which is what you prefer, or if they just give a name without, I mean, even if they sign in, they can give their own name, and that's the information you're going to get, and that makes it a bit more difficult. Now, if you already use other platforms instead of Dr. Froth like GCSE Maths, again, it's another homework platform that uses a lot of exam-style questions as well. So again, similar features to this. So if you do use that, but even if you don't use that, GCSE has a lot of videos that you can use. And as I said, if you want to do an offline lesson, well, offline meaning it's not going to be live, so you're doing an online lesson without being live, you want to find a video for students to watch, then maybe go through a PowerPoint or a worksheet, and then set some work. And that's one approach that we do. So if you look for any video that you want on there, you can put the word GCSE next to it, and then you'll find it. Now, talking about videos and supporting your students, starting next week, I can inform you that Pearson are going to be having live lessons, GCSE live lessons, where you can invite your students to go on to it via YouTube, and then the focus will be problem-solving focuses. And it'll be about, I think, once a week. And this way they're going to be trying to fill in some gaps on certain topics that they should have also known before year 11. So that's something to be aware of and look for. And again, if you have more questions on this, we can always answer them at the end of the presentation. Talking again about videos, tlmaths.com has a lot of A-level videos that you can assign to your year 12s together with the same approach. But what I also liked about this was this tag on the side here that says GCSE to A-level bridging the gap. And that for me is important because a lot of our year 11s have stopped their learning quite early, and we're going to have, especially depending on what the what grades you accept on there will be gaps, and setting and giving them some work that will help them, especially the students that you think that will be following A-level in the future, using these resources would be quite helpful. So he's got videos. You could then choose which video you want, assign it, because they're all on YouTube as well, but this from his website you can then choose it, and then assign a PowerPoint and a presentation, or do an online lesson afterwards. And these are ways that you could do that. So bridging the gap, for me, that's important. Something else that onmaths.com does, they did announce they were doing a national test to help us with ranking and grading, but when they mentioned that, I started thinking about my year 10s, and I said, I haven't got the latest. Usually at this period, we'll be doing a full mock and seeing where they are before they start in year 11. I'm not keen to do immediately a mock when they go back to school, so they miss so much. Again, we don't know what kind of situation we'll be facing when we go back to school, and not even thinking about a full mock at that point. But an online mock, that might help. So you could register for this, create a code, send the code, and students can then do an online paper where they put the final answer and press mark it. Now, again, they're doing this at home. They have access to computers, phones. Depends how much you can trust them. But it's something so you can actually get a diagnosis of where they are, hopefully. Hopefully, if you know your students well, you'll know if some of the data that comes back looks a bit either too high or too low, then you can then decide whether you want to trust it. But it's something we did use with year 10s, and I do like it. You'll have a dashboard like that one, where you'll have all your students, and then red, amber, green of how they've done. On diagnosis, pinpoint learning. If you've used it before, you should be aware that this really helps tackle any gaps of knowledge afterwards, and a way to get all the mocks that they've done. If you're brand new at this, I think the name says it itself. If you haven't used this before, they've also offered this for free, I think up to October. So you can just register and upload all your students' details immediately. Again, I would try and get the same usernames if possible to avoid this. This is really good for year 10s going into year 11. So if you have any data of mocks they've done before you closed, or if you have year 11s who want to go into year 12. So if you have any gap analysis like this, upload it of your year 11s if you haven't used this before, and then you'll be able to have, each student will have their own profile. And within their profile, they'll have a maths matrix, which looks like this, with all the topics and grades on the side, and then each column is a different paper they've done. So if you have the data, you can just upload them all at once, and then you'll have a picture like this. They'll have an individual booklet that you can download with one button and then set. So even if you don't want them logging on this, if you upload this, you can download their booklets, and then you can assign them in the homework platform that you use. And each individual booklet, of course, because they'll have different questions, you can then download the solutions for each of them. So he's done a good way of an algorithm that puts the questions together like that, and then they have the solutions. If they do have access to this, though, they can then go watch videos for the 5 weakest topics based on their performance. So you can then do that with your year 11s. And the reason I'm talking about the year 11s going into year 12 is because in the profile, he's also created something new called A-level transition. And with that, he's created packs of certain topics that if they have gaps in, they'll have issues with A-level. But if they practice this, then they'll do really well when they come into A-level. So those packs, the students can access them themselves, or you can go online and then download them once you put the information on there. And that's, again, a useful tool that you can use during this time. The reason I'm mentioning also, you might have heard of Oak National Academy online, and especially with all the support that they've had with the government. Now, the reason I'm mentioning it here, if you want to use more resources for other groups as well, I haven't mentioned, they're creating videos all the time, so you could use that with your students to learn. So it starts with a quiz. They then watch the videos, and then they do another quiz at the end to see whether they've seen progress. So that's also available, and it's free as well. So that's another one to think about and use in any of the ways I mentioned. Now, if you are considering doing online lessons, I put this together based on the experience of myself, but other teachers I've collaborated with, so that we could just give you a few points to think about. Considering the student's background, that's important, because there will be some students that live in a very small household with a lot of children within that, and they won't have the space or the computer, or they might be sharing a computer. And we have had feedback that some students are struggling to do with all the homework at home. So you need to really know your students at that point. You decide whether you want to give online live lessons, recorded lessons, or whether you want to give just tasks with PowerPoints like I mentioned, and then what frequency you want to do that. And are you flexible? Are you allowed to just choose, or do you have a school system or procedure that you have to follow? That might be good to check. Use of a visualizer. I've mentioned this before. I'll show you a screenshot of my own visualizer in a minute. A digital whiteboard, or you might even want to have a whiteboard at the back here, where you're standing and teaching like some of the videos I showed you. And so those are different ways. If you don't want your face to be shown, the visualizer is the best way, or you're holding your phone from the top looking down. And again, that will be a bit difficult. On this point, I'll also mention PowerPoint. PowerPoints have live presentation feature, which is quite new. Do put live presentation PowerPoint on search engine. You'll get some features, and what's nice about that, as you're speaking, they get a code. They can then watch the PowerPoint, hear you, but they can also select 35 different languages. So if you do have EL students within you, it'll translate it by itself, and they don't get to see you either. So if you don't want that, that's something new as well that I thought was quite powerful. That's an interesting one. Do you need to follow this scheme of work? I think most topics can be taught virtually. Of course, I would prefer teaching some things with a compass and a protractor when I'm in there to see, because I know sometimes there are the ways they hold them. I can't really help them at that point, especially if I'm not seeing them. Even with tracing papers, you're missing all this. And I know we can use digital versions of this, but when it comes to an actual exam, well, they're going to be doing it on paper and not on the screen. So for me, it's important to teach those topics in front of them. But again, you might defer, but that's a conversation to have with your department. Does the school use a specific platform? If they already use online platforms for setting homework, don't create more work. Don't create more logins. We had to communicate to all the parents by text messages and emails to inform them about the online live lessons. We did that using school systems. So if you have that, utilize it. Use it in your advantage. Decide which sites. I've mentioned a few sites. There's even a lot more sites out there. But if every site needs a username and a password, and you start going from one to the other, you're going to have to make a lot of different logins, and that's an issue. So decide which ones you want to go for. It doesn't matter; it could be different between year groups, but don't mix a lot of them within one class. It'll be very difficult to manage. And if you had excuses in school about, oh, I forgot my login, or I forgot my password, or imagine now that you're not at school. If you have a second screen, I have an extension screen here. I like that because in my year 12s, a lot of them I have the confidence of having the videos on now. I have them on the second screen there. So as I'm teaching on my laptop here, I can just look to the side and I can see the whole class. And that's quite powerful because like in the classroom, when you're looking around to see for if they're on task and so on, I can do that with a second screen. Now, again, not everyone, that's a luxury for me. I happen to have a computer at home. I connected with the laptop and I managed this. If you don't have, that's an issue. Or alternatively, if you do have a second laptop or device, you could connect as a user, as a student into your own session and then have just all the videos displayed. Then you can then watch them. Pause sharing. Like I shared the screen earlier on, remember there might be a lot of private emails or private information coming up. So be careful with that. Remember you can share that. Have a gap between lessons in case lessons. Now, I've been teaching 2 to 3 lessons every day to year 10s, year 11s and 12s because I took over both year 12 groups we have. I allow 1 hour gap because sometimes my lessons might overrun, but then I also want to update the homework tasks online or upload PowerPoints or worksheets, and I need a small break before I go into the next lesson. So make sure they're not back to back. It's not as easy as when it's in the classroom. And make sure you inform all the staff that are in charge of this one. A few things about during the lesson time. And this were advice and recommendations I gave to my own team when we started the year 10s. We said, make sure you share the expectations at the beginning of each lesson. So think back when you have a brand new class at the beginning of each year. It's a new platform. It's a different type of teaching. Just because you've taught them in the classroom, don't expect that they're going to know immediately how to act on a new platform. They're going to want to challenge it as well. Some of them are going to want to see if they can bend the rules a bit, so be prepared for that. So make sure the expectations. And if you did used to give warnings, I think one warning is far too many itself on this, because again, there are safeguarding issues that we need to be aware of. The other thing we do, we allow casual conversation. A lot of the students, they haven't left the house, and they haven't seen their friends. I know some of them do the social media, but it's a nice opportunity to check and ask and let them talk for a few minutes, and also see if they're okay. Because if you're doing live lessons, you can check, and if there's anything you're worried about, immediately advise and talk to the school. Like I mentioned, the homework's online. If you saw that you've done a diagnostic test and you can start with the weakest questions, and I do that. This way, I keep ensuring my expectation that I want the homework done. Just because we're not there, I do want it. Make sure the instructions are clear. Something I do is when I'm talking, I have everyone muted at that point. They can then either use a raise hand, like we have on this feature here, or the chat. I might even want to disable the chat at some point and allow them only to talk with myself. And then the other thing I'll do is I'll ask specific questions to specific students. One, to see if they're still, not just to make sure that they are keeping with it, but if they have the video and their mic off, I want to make sure that they're listening to me. And they would have been warned from the beginning of my lesson that those questions might be coming in. And it keeps them alert this way. I give specific timings as well, and those instructions are very clear at the beginning of each task. And I'm just looking because I think I've mentioned everything here. The other thing I might do is see if there's a confident student to go through a question with me like I would in class. I will still be the person writing on the screen if they're going to have a tablet they can write on, because some of the features you can actually send them remote control. But if you don't want to do that, you can just ask them to speak out and then write it on the screen. So some of the platforms, I think one of the best ones to use are Teams, especially if your students or if your school's using this. It's more safe if your students can come in and log in through a school use email, for example. But if we weren't ready for this, so therefore even though we have Teams, we weren't prepared and we didn't have all the students, so it becomes a more challenge at that point. The other thing is that there's only 4 screens. So the other option is Google Classroom, and there's a lot more features that you can do, and Google will help you with that. But again, it's setting up and sending them links. Now, if you just send a link for them to log in and check, then it's similar to Zoom, which is the other platform. But the easier it is for students to join you, the more safeguarding issues there can be for other students or other people coming in. And even if you lock it, it's just how you check which students are in there. So that's Google Classroom. Zoom is also, now Zoom, I'm only going to mention that by default, a lot of these settings are different. And I'll just put a slide with settings which I recommend you to change, because then you're going to have a lot of safeguarding issues. So that's just a slide with some recommendations, because the default ones can cause a lot of trouble in behavior management. And one of the biggest issues I'm worried about is cyberbullying. So make sure you change some of those settings before that. I did mention my visualizer a few times. Here's my workstation. You can see the extended screen. You can see my laptop, and you can see the visualizer here. Notice that I have one of those active learn worksheets up there. My visualizer here, my pen and paper, and I've done lessons like this as well, and I can see my video and what I'm sharing. The students, when they join my session, they see my worksheet on one side and then see my actual annotation. So it's almost like in the classroom where I have my whiteboard on the side, and then I have the projected slides or worksheet. And that's how they get to see it. So they don't need to see me at all. They can just hear me like you're hearing me now. Something to make sure you don't forget: rewards and recognition. Some ways of motivating, engaging, but also making them feel good and their own student well-being as well, is making sure you praise the students. And if you do have students who are consistent, they're doing the work, they are completing, you can tell with the online homework platforms I mentioned earlier on, make sure you mention any head of year or pastoral staff, or if you have an online school system, record it. And check with your school, depending on your school policy, maybe even phone home. They're with the parents most of the time, and they're at home, and you can really make them feel good and positive, and that'll be good for their own self-esteem and their own well-being, but also they'll be more engaged and more thankful when they come back as well. Postcards. Now, again, be very careful. And anything like this, I would check with the school and see what the protocol is and procedures. But if any of this is difficult to do, just make a note and reward them when they go back to school. Make a big deal about this. The fact that they're following instructions and they've been taking and doing all the work you've set them. And like I said, I want to share some of the things, some safeguarding issues and some things you should be aware. Some of these are recommended by my designated safeguarding leader, who's taken part in webinars from Educare, and these are some of the things that we should be aware of. Make sure we always maintain appropriate professional boundaries, and try and avoid one-to-ones. That's to safeguard yourselves as well, not just the child. Teachers and students must wear suitable clothing. If you're going to have the videos on, as soon as you see them wearing in the pajamas, for example, they just got out of bed, turn the video off, and try and avoid allowing them to have videos on if they're in the bedrooms. And where possible, if they can blur the background. A lot of those websites I mentioned earlier on, they have that facility. And any live lesson should be always recorded. So if there's anything else, you support and back yourselves up. And again, the lesson should be of a reasonable length of time during working hours, during school hours, and make sure you make a note of when you've done that, as well as who attended those sessions as well. So if there's any question at any point, you can support yourselves. And before you do any online live lessons, make sure your head of department, senior leader, and pastoral person, or they're all involved and aware of this, so they can support you. Just finally, some resources. Maths Emporium. So we've used some of this as tasks to upload on the homework platforms. If we go into the GCSE Mathematics, we have a look at the practice papers. In there, there's 3 resources which I really like. One of them is themed practice papers. They're updating them and again, they're free to use, and make sure that you just use your logins to access the Pearson ones. So in the Maths Emporium, the themed practice papers, you've got, for example, DIY here, but they are creating new ones. And I think choosing worksheets like this at this point, with a bit more realistic or applications to real life, I think they're more appealing to students. On another note, you've got the targeted ones, practice for aiming for grade 4, 7, and 9. You might want to target some of your year 10s based on what grade you've left them, or your last mock before they left, or based on any feedback that you get, you can give them and upload one of those worksheets, and the solutions are in there as well. And finally, the gold, silver, bronze, they're quite popular. If you, just reminding you of them, if you're not aware of what these are, you'll have your bronze question, which I think is quite suitable right now, where you cannot scaffold it through a live lesson. If you're not teaching a live lesson or you're not in the classroom, they can then see those questions, how they are. You get then so that was the bronze one, the silver one with less scaffolding, and then the gold one, which is the exam style question. So that's the same question in 3 different versions, and this really helps for independent learning. And finally, just mentioning that Mr. Barton, since I've mentioned him a few times, he's done a great job of having some podcasts for some of these resources I've mentioned, but going in much more depth. For a series he's made for teaching from home. I've put the link, as well as all the other links, at the end of the slideshow, which you can download later on. Just Maths has done a series of 2 sessions about getting ready to teach the new GCSE for ITT and NQTs. Mel and her team realized, and I thought that was quite good, because I'm also got a trainee teacher who's starting working with us next year. Her training practice was cut short, but she's going to be having to deal with a lot of her classrooms herself next year. So to help her get up to date and a bit of support, Mel and her team have done this. So I've put her blog so you can look at the resources that she's mentioned, as well as follow her on Twitter on Just Maths, please, as well. That would be very useful. And some other things she's mentioned, she's also bringing some support for what to do when the year 10s go back as year 11. So look for that. On this point, I will also mention that Pearson are also considering doing a program for NQTs online as well, that you can then refer to any NQTs that you might have in your department so that they can have support there as well. Finally, if you're not following it, there's a daily bulletin from the DFE, and actually today the bulletin was about remote education, and they have some links in there that refer to some advice, some case studies as well that maybe you might read as well and get some more ideas. And at this point, I've gone through everything. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you so much, Melios. Thank you for that. So many resources you have mentioned, and it all looks brilliant. We had a few questions. Someone has asked, what software do you use to write on a PowerPoint? I have a graphic tablet, just not the software. Do you know? Can you help?
Right. So PowerPoint itself, I don't know how quickly, can I share the screen for quickly, just because I have it ready, just to show that. PowerPoint is, okay, here we go. So if I share that, so you can see this, if I bring my, so here's a PowerPoint here that I've used with, I think it's year 12, so you can see that. Now, when you do have an interactive pen, and if you have one of the latest versions, you have the draw feature here. So if you're not if you don't have it on presentation mode, it's up here, and you can choose from different pens and highlighters, and they also have this ruler here, which I like because it's interactive. If you have a touchscreen, you can rotate them. It's really good for shapes, but also graphs. And they also have this ink to shape. I haven't used it for a while, so ink replay. Anyway, they have this. I need to work around that one. I haven't used it for a while. And they have ink to maths, but you can also put symbols as well. But it's up here. If you have the presentation loaded, I don't know if it's going to work with my screen, because I have an extended screen. If you do have that, let me see if I can. Okay, see it. If you can you see? Sarah, are you with me? Can you see the border around this?
I can't see a border.
Okay, so depending what you can see on there, on the left bottom corner, there will be an icon of a pen. So, and you can use that, and then that's how I created that one. So there's a pen at the bottom left corner. Alternatively, as I said, you could do this with the draw feature here at the top. So you don't really need another software. There are many softwares, of course, and whiteboards, but I use a lot of it from the PowerPoint. Thank you. Sarah, back to you.
Thanks, Melios. There was another question, someone who said, how did Melios show both screens at the same time, i.e. the active learn screen and his visualizer?
So I was using at that point Zoom, but Google Meet as well as Teams does this feature as well. I replaced in the video settings of one of those software I just mentioned. When I connected my visualizer, I went into the settings and I changed it from my webcam to the visualizer. So the students were able to see, instead of seeing my face, they were seeing the visualizer, and then I was sharing screens with the PowerPoint or the Active Learn. So in other words, I was sharing screens like I just did now, but instead of seeing my face, they were seeing the visualizer camera instead. And then they just adjusted and saw both at the same time. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Melios. Someone has asked, what was the software again for using whiteboard?
For whiteboards, well, it depends what you use. So as I said, if you use the digital book on Active Learn, it has its own features. If you're using Dr. Frost, it has its own whiteboard feature. Google Meet as well as Zoom, when you do click on share screen, you can also share like a whiteboard itself, or you could be sharing a screen and using the PowerPoint, just have a slide, and then you can use the draw features from there. Just make sure you have one of the latest versions of PowerPoint. Sarah?
Melios, I'm here. I'm just reading through any questions that we have. that I might have missed? Someone said, can you list all the websites you introduced as a summary? I think that's part of your presentation. So if you look just below Melios's presentation, it says downloadable files, and that's where you can download Melios's presentation, which has all the websites, as you can see now on your screen. So if you want to download that presentation, it's right there, just below the screen. It says downloadable files. Okay, Melios, I'm going to now hand over to Mark, who will remind you of where to get some more information around Ofqual and any updates that they're doing. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Sarah. I hope you can all hear me this time. I do apologise for the technical problems at the start of the session. Can I just say a big thank you to Melios? It was a really great session. I hope you all found today useful, but on behalf of all of us at Pearson, I just want to say a big thank you to Melios for helping support you all today. On behalf of the maths team at Pearson, I would like to thank you all for attending this session today. If this was your first time at one of our online sessions or indeed networks, we really hope you found the session engaging and helpful in supporting your students at this time. At this challenging time, our priority at Pearson is to ensure that we provide comprehensive support for teachers and parents to help keep students learning as much as possible. Firstly, and as has been mentioned, and I saw lots of questions and discussions about this during the session, we've made available for secondary schools and further education colleges free subscriptions to Active Learn, providing tools and resources to personalised teaching and learning for Key Stage 3, GCSE and our A-level qualifications. We will be running further online sessions like the one you've been attending today across the summer term, offering a range of extensive support as well for all of you during the next few weeks and months. I think, as Sarah mentioned, we are really keen to hear from you about what more we can do to support you. So please, if you have time to complete our poll at the end of the session, we would be really grateful. This will help engage us with you and make sure that the support we're offering over the next few weeks and months meets your needs. And so please do take that time to fill those polls out. As Sarah mentioned, as I'm sure you've all seen, Ofqual have published a consultation on how GCSEs and A-levels will be awarded following the cancellations of this year's exams. Yesterday, and whilst Ofqual collate responses to the consultation, they published an interim update on arrangements focusing on Year 10 students and below, as well as an update on private candidates. If you haven't done so already, please do make sure you read this information carefully as soon as possible. For the latest support and guidance from Pearson about this summer's exam series, please visit our website. On this website, you will find regulatory updates. So we've included on there all announcements that have been published by Ofqual to date. So if you have missed anything or want to go back through and just make sure you're up to date with everything that Ofqual have announced, they're all listed and links to those available on our website. We've also published a timeline of key dates, so it includes things like entry deadlines, when we expect grades to be submitted, and some dates there for you that we hope you'll find useful as you start to put together your centre assessment grades. And with that in mind, we've also provided some information and some resources to help with preparing your centre assessment grades as well as your rank orders this summer. So again, please do visit our website and check that support and advice out. So finally for me, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you for attending, and once again a huge thank you to Melios for the content that he prepared today and shared with you. We do hope you find it really interesting. As I said, please do take some time to fill out those polls at the end of the session, and we look forward to welcoming you back here again for our next online session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for that. Just a few things to reiterate from what Mark has said. We do have lots of other GCSE Maths networks coming up. We have one on the 20th of May around problem solving at GCSE. So if you'd like to log on to that network, I'm posting the link to register right now. There's also another network we're doing around resources and support for Year 11 students transitioning to A-level. So if you wish to register for that, please do so. There's also lots more coming up around GCSE statistics and also how we can further support Year 10. So please do look out for those links. The evaluation form should be on your screen right now, so please, if you do have 2 minutes, we would very much appreciate any feedback you have around today's event, and it will also help shape further support we can provide you. So please do fill in the evaluation form. Just lastly, the downloadable files, Melios's presentation is available for you to download, so please do click on that and download it if you wish to have access to all of the resources Melios has mentioned today. The platform is available until 6 p.m. for you to continue to network with each other. So, and we will be here still answering all the questions that you've sent through. So, apart from that, I hope you have a very pleasant evening.